Hello, Digital Marketing 3 part-time students. I hope you are all doing well, and I would also like to apologize for what happened on Thursday, having a 4-hour load shedding that totally messed up with our schedule because our session was also starting at the same time from 6 to 10 p.m. So I hope the issue of load shedding is going to be resolved soon, as it's having a huge impact on our virtual engagement. So I've pre-recorded this session for you so that you guys, if you've got time, you can be able to engage with these discussions that I'm going to have virtually, even though it's always tricky and quite not convenient to have a pre-recorded session because it is a one-way communication. It's always better if everyone is in class and we can engage together and there is a two-way communication. So we continue with our series on strategy formulation. If you remember, on lesson 47 to 54, we did strategy formulation whereby you need to look at alternative options for your strategy. So once your strategy is in force, once you've used a source stack planning framework for strategy and you are implementing it, there are options that you need to weigh when you're doing your monitoring of that strategy, your performance indicators, and so forth. So with those options that you'll be weighing, there are so many decisions that you need to consider. So we have discussed some of the decisions. We have discussed decision 1 to decision 3. The first decision that you need to consider is the market and product development. So you need to weigh in the option of market penetration, the option of market development, the option of product development, and the option of diversification. You need to apply the Ansoff grid on that decision 1. And as I've always said, many organizations have done that already. Many organizations are looking at the market, doing market research, seeing and assessing whether they can introduce new products or whether they can diversify the business and whether they can penetrate the existing market or whether they can develop a new market. We've seen with giant corporates in South Africa, such as Discovery, penetrating the bank sector, coming up with new products that are completely different from their ways of doing business. We know Discovery is an insurance provider, but all of a sudden it is now competing in the banking sector with the likes of FNB, Nedbank, and so on. So it has diversified their product. It has developed a product, and it is tapping into existing markets that have been traditionally used by banks. We have seen with banks themselves, they are also diversifying their products. You know, you see FNB or Nedbank having funeral insurance, having life cover. You see with FNB or Standard Bank offering network services such as a SIM card to their customers. So if an FNB holder has got an FNB SIM card already, they are competing with the Vodacom, with the MTN, and with the CLC. So they are competing with the Hollard Funeral Services and so forth. So South African brands are actually considering decision 1 that we have unpacked, whereby they look at the Ansoff grid and see how their strategy can fit in there. Then the second decision that you need to consider is the business models as well as the revenue generation. So as a business, you need to consider whether your existing business model is operating well and it is generate the income that would like it to generate. So on that one, we have spoken about B2B, we've spoken about C2C and so forth. Think about what SPA is doing at the moment, they're considering the e-commerce, they are considering instead of being a brick and mortar supermarket whereby customers physically go and shop for groceries, they are now considering having SPA to you digital service in order to tap in the digital customers. So you can also think about the business models. If your traditional business offers B2C model, like if you are Boston and you're dealing directly with individual consumers, you students, can Boston then consider dealing with other organizations who can send a whole bunch of employees to come and start at Boston? So that becomes a B2B business model. If Boston talks to Pick and Pay, or if Boston reaches out to existing companies out there that they send all their employees to come and have a diploma in a certain field, and the companies will be paying a certain amount to Boston, it becomes a B2B, because here Boston is dealing directly with other businesses. So these are some of the business models that your strategy need to consider on decision 2. And when it comes to revenue generation, every strategy must either increase the existing revenue or make better profits. So to realize that if SPA used to get a certain amount of revenue through its traditional business model, once it starts using SPA to you delivery service, means that it's going to tap in digital consumers, so the sales can either increase, and if the sales increase, that will mean that their revenue is also increasing and their profits are also increasing. I've read somewhere with Checkers 6060 that ever since Checkers have implemented that service, their sales have increased. So you also need to consider the decision of making sure that the strategy that you're formulating, the strategy that you have implemented using SoStack, you can actually generate more income through it. Then we spoke about decision 3, which is target audience. With target audience, there are so many questions that you need to ask yourself as a business or as a strategy formulator. You need to consider who is it that you are going to reach out. And if it is not working, what other options do you have? So that's why we have got a section on your F2 whereby you need to identify segments for YapiChef. After you've identified those segments, you need to choose one segment that is going to work for you and motivate your answers. So this question is directly linked to decision 3 of strategy formulation, which is target audience. So you need to know if the target audience before was the teenagers, those who are 13 to 19, and it has not been working well, what will be the alternate target audience? Do you want to consider the youths, those who are 18 to 35? Do you want to consider the baby boomers? So you can always make a decision based on the target audience. And if it's that target audience that you've selected, if it's working well, how can you improve on that strategy? So all these decisions are not only for you to change and consider an alternate decisions. It's also an opportunity for strategists to use this decision to check whether the strategy is progressing or not. So now, with lesson 55, we are now going to look at decision 4, which talks about differential advantage. So once you have done decision 1, which is market and product development, once you've done decision 2, which is business models and alternative revenue, and once you've done decision 3, which is target media, Now you need to do decision 4 and look at how you are going to differentiate yourself from your competitors. Differential advantage helps a lot because you stand out as an individual brand, and you can also be easily identified by your consumers. So that's what we are going to look at, and we continue with the outcomes for the series. And at the end of this session, you should be able to evaluate digital strategy approaches for different marketplaces. So we are going to look at the differential advantages, as I said, and we are also going to look at the online value proposition, also called the OVP. Then we won't be able to do activity 4.3 because this is a pre-recorded session, but I'm going to encourage you that you have a look at these activities because they are so helpful. They help you to apply what we are discussing on real life scenarios. So differential advantage is how a company decides to compete in the market, which is also called positioning, provides the organization a differential advantage. The aim of positioning is the development of a differential advantage. Key to creating a differential advantage is the segment that you look at and the elements of the marketing mix. So as much as differential advantage is all about how unique you are in the market, how you position yourself, it can also be linked to a competitive advantage. So what is the difference between a differential advantage and a competitive advantage? The difference is that with differential advantage, you are only setting yourself as unique. Whereas competitive advantage, you are actually setting yourself as unique and also be able to be on top of the game above your competitors. So realize that if you are so good, if you have done that competitive advantage, agility times reach over time to market, you can end up being on top of the game. You know, Apple has got a differential advantage and a competitive advantage. We know the performance of the iPhones. We know also how huge Apple is as a brand. So it has got both a differential advantage and a competitive advantage. So there are different sources of advantage, differential advantage. On this session, we are going to look at only 3, but there are so many sources that you can use to determine a differential advantage, such as the staff, you know, the 7S framework that we discussed, the staff, the company's strategy, its skills, its style, its ways of doing things, and so on. But the 3 that you are going to discuss are the price, the brand experience, and the quality of service. So I mentioned this example on Thursday before we had huge network interruptions. That price always have a way to distinguish between different brands. So it is not only price in terms of the other brand being able to offer cheap stuff, being able to be affordable, but it can also be price in terms of value, you know. So even if you think something is expensive now, it can always give you value in future. I gave you an example of Converse All-Star being sold at Total Sport versus a normal shoe, an ordinary shoe being sold at Mr. Price. So the shoe that is being sold at Mr. Price goes for 150 rands only. Whereas the shoe that being sold at Total Sport, the Converse All-Star, goes for 950 rands. So there is then a customer here who is looking for a shoe, who has identified the need for a shoe. But this same customer is also considerate of the economical factors. You know, he or she needs a shoe that is going to last longer. He or she needs a shoe that is going to have a return of investment in terms of value. So this person would make calculations. You know, when it comes to pricing, as I've always mentioned, you need to know that customers are not stupid. Never underestimate the intelligence of customers, especially when things are very difficult. Customers are so good at budgets. Customers are so good at calculations, Customers are so good at priorities. They know if I get this, it is going to do this and that. So here with the price at Mr. Price, a customer would make some assessment and see that if I get the shoe that cost me 150 rands, that shoe will only last 6 months. If I buy a 150 pair of shoe at Mr. Price, it's going to last in 60 months. So you realize that after 50 months, it's going to be torn out, it's going to wear out, and it's going to be damaged. Whereas if I buy that expensive shoe, which is 950 Total Sport, is going to last me 5 years, So now to realize that in that 5 years, if I buy a shoe at Mr. Price, it means that every year I'm going to buy that shoe twice because it's only going to last 6 months. So if I buy it twice per year, in 5 years, I would have bought 10 pairs of those shoes. 10 times 150, it becomes 1,500 rands. Whereas if I buy a pair of All-Star shoes at Total Sport, in 5 years, it's only going to cost me 950 rands. So there will be a huge save from 1,500 rands to 950 rands. So price is a very good differentiator, not only in terms of the amount, but also in terms of the product value. Then we have got brand experience. Brand experience is also a source of differential advantage. All the thoughts that you have about the brand, or everything that a brand is known for, it can always make that brand unique. So brand experience is the sum of all the sensation, the thoughts, the feelings, and the reactions that individuals have in response to a brand. So you'd realize that the moment you hear the word Woolies or Woolworths, and the moment you hear the word Shoprite, the moment you hear the word Samsung, and the moment you hear the word Mobicel, already you know the differential advantages of these brands that I've mentioned. So everything that you know from its customers, from its product, from its ways of doing things, the customer service, the quality, and everything has to do with brand, and a brand can be a differentiator on its own. Then also the quality of a service. Even before I went to Shoprite, or before I went to Cambridge supermarket, I've heard people coming up with a description or with a term about the trolleys, the shopping trolleys that are used at these supermarkets, compared to the trolleys that are used at Woolies. So already the quality of service, be it offline service, be it digital service, says a lot about a brand and its uniqueness in comparison to other brands. Some, the moment you send a query, they can immediately respond to that query. Some, the moment you make an order, they can start sending you notifications about the status of your order, where your order is. You can easily track and locate the order. Whereas some, the moment you show up, you are now in limbo. You're now curious, you don't even know what is happening with your order. Sometimes the order can take 20 days to reach you, and so forth. So the quality of services is also a unique source of differential advantage. You are buying from an international or a global e-commerce. They don't tell you whether your product is going to be having some duty or import tax and stuff like that. So quality of service determines the differential advantage. And if you've got a good quality of a service, then you end up having a competitive advantage. Then an online value proposition, on the other hand, clarifies and communicates the positioning and differential advantage of a company. So once you have that differential advantage, once you are that Apple, once you are that Woolies, you then start developing online content and services that the communication itself will reinforce the brand proposition and credibility. The communication itself, it will communicate what a visitor gets from a brand online and offline, as well as the messages communicated both offline and online. So that's the value proposition. And the value proposition also determines the way you engage with your consumers, whether those who are visiting or those who exist. So there are so many benefits that you can have with the online value proposition. Some of them you need to think on your own, but these are the only ones that I'm going to discuss. So the first benefit for online value proposition is that it helps the difference between e-commerce site from competitor sites. It helps the difference between Wish e-commerce and Shein e-commerce. It also provides a focus on marketing efforts, the company clear on purpose of site. So I've always realized that you'll find someone who works at Pick n Pay, but they know nothing about how the Pick n Pay Facebook page or how the Pick n Pay website works. So if you've got a good online value proposition, you can provide a focus on a marketing effort, as well as staff knowing the clear purpose of their digital assets. It can also be used as part of earned media. Remember, we looked at three types of media. We looked at owned media, we looked at paid media, we looked at owned media. So this is a good way for earned media, which can be part of the public relations as well as the word of mouth recommendations. And it can also be linked to a product proposition. So these are the stuff that online value proposition can be used as a benefit. So companies are encouraged to always know the role of online value proposition in their strategy. They are encouraged to always know the role of differential advantage on their strategy. So decision 4 is also crucial to strategy formulation. So this one, I'm going to give you guys a task to do that you need to complete activity 4.3, and please don't forget to discuss it when we meet on Thursday. So that was it about lesson 55 and the decision 4 that we've unpacked. Now we are going to move on to lesson 56. So if there are any questions, if there are any queries, if there are any additions, if there are also any subtractions, if there are any critiques, please don't forget to reach out to the entire class, and we can always have these discussions on Core Campus Discussion Forum, as well as on the provided WhatsApp group for part-time digital marketing 3. Thank you.